In this exercise, we're going to learn how to replace an existing floor with a different type of floor, as well as modify the properties of an existing floor so that it has the right properties for the type of construction we're trying to accomplish. To do this, we're going to zoom in so that we can see some of the different floors in our 3D view. Now move your mouse up and then highlight over the second floor and click. Highlight over the third floor, then hold your control key down on your keyboard and then select the third floor. When you do this, you'll now have both of these floors selected, and we'll see underneath the type selector list that these are the floor generic 12-inch. If you click there, we'll see that there's a variety of other floors that we could choose from. In this case, 12 inch is way too thick for this kind of floor. We're just going to pick the 3-inch lightweight concrete on a 2-inch metal deck. By doing this, we can see that both of these floors are now thinner, as they've taken on the properties of a 3-inch lightweight concrete floor on 2-inch metal deck. The properties that make this floor up can be found underneath Edit Type, and then selecting the Edit button next to the word Structure. We can see that this is made up of lightweight concrete, and the total thickness of this floor is 5 inches in thickness. Now click down here where we have the OK button to get out of this dialog box, and then click again where we have the OK. Click somewhere out here in space. Now move your mouse over and then highlight this floor, the sloping floor on the inside of a garage area. You'll notice it too is a generic 12-inch floor. Now realistically speaking, this is way too thick for a garage floor. It should be more like 4 inches in thickness. So to be able to make an adjustment to that, we'll come down here to Edit Type, move up here and select on the Duplicate button. And we're going to call this 4-inch garage floor and click on OK. Next, click on the Edit button and change the thickness to be 4 inches. Also, when you do this, you see there's an option here for material. Click where it has by category, then select on this little box over here on the side. This is going to bring up the material dialog box. We can start to look for different materials that we might use on our project, including different concretes. Now we could choose any of these that we wanted to off of the list. Since concrete lightweight is what we use on the other floors, that's just going to be what I pick here, but we could have picked any of these other ones off of the list. When we do this, we can see what the pattern of it would look like in a plane view, as well as in a section view. This is also, underneath materials, the reason why each of these objects display the way that they do. You assign it the right material, and it'll have the right display representation inside of your model environment. Click on OK. So we have concrete structure, 4 inches thick. Click on OK again. One more time, click on OK. And we can now see this floor is still highlighted, but it's now a 4-inch garage floor, and it's drawn in right in this location. So to make modifications to the floors, you can use Select on the floor and pick a new floor off of the Type Selector list, or you can select on your floors, come over to Edit Type, Edit, and then adjust its properties accordingly inside of the Edit Assembly dialog box. In this lesson, why opening objects are good for cutting holes in floors, ceilings, as well as roofs. To begin by placing an opening object, we need to come underneath the Architecture tab, and the kind of opening object that we want to place will be a shaft opening. This is specifically designed for going from floor to floor. After selecting shaft, pick your rectangle tool off of the list, click one of the upper corners of the room, then draw a rectangular shape. The exact dimensions don't matter so much, just make it somewhere between maybe 19'6" and 20 foot. We can always adjust this after the fact when it comes time to place the actual staircase, and then click when you have that rectangular shape in place. Let's take a look at the properties of this opening that we just created. One of the things that we know is that it has a base constraint of level 1. If yours doesn't, that's okay. Just make sure that here on the list it says level 1 is the base constraint. If there's any offsets on yours, between base offset being 0, 0 or top offset 0, 0, just change it to be 0, 0 if it says anything different. For the top constraint, change that to be level 3. By making the top constraint level 3, this means create a hole through level 2 and up through level 3. which is the exact opening that we want for our shaft for our staircase to fit inside of. Click on Apply. Then move over here and click the big green check mark for OK. When you do this, even though we can't really see a difference on this floor, we've now created a hole on our other floors. To see this, double-click on your level 2 or double-click on your level 3, and you'll see that line, and that's where your opening is at. To really see the opening, take a look at it in a 3D view by selecting on the little house. You may need to spin this around by holding the Shift key down in the wheel at the same time. You'll then be able to see that opening that's going through each of these individual floors. So the opening command can be found underneath Architecture and Opening, and if you want to cut through multiple different layers of material, such as roof, your floors, and your ceilings, use the Shaft Opening tool to accomplish this task. Once you have a floor in place, one of the things that you can do is copy that floor and that floor condition up to level 3 as well as level 4. To do this, we need to begin by selecting on the floor. If you're able to find the edge of the floor right there at the edge of where the curtain wall is at, click in order to select it. Next, there's a tool, and it's called Copy to Clipboard. That's different from the normal Revit copy command, which is over here. You want to select the Copy the Clipboard command. Once you've done that, you'll notice that Paste becomes available. Click on the word Paste, then select Align to Selected Levels. When you do this, it'll ask you a question. Which levels would you like to have your floor copied up to? Click level 3 to start with, hold down Control, and then select level 4. Holding down Control allowed you to select more than one at a time. Click OK. Now immediately it looks like nothing special has happened, but in the background it's copied this floor up to level 3 as well as level 4. Now go to your 3D view to take a look at it. And we can see it's copied that floor up to each of those levels. Now in this case, I really want my level 4 to be a roof object. So click on the floor and then hit the delete key on your keyboard. And that'll get rid of that particular floor up there on top. Now that we've done that, we can spin it around and we can take a look at how that floor looks in our plan. Remember, all you need to do is select on a floor, come over here to Copy to Clipboard, then choose Paste, and then align it to selected levels. And this also works with such things as our ceilings, furniture, and anything that might be on that level that we would have selected. It'll make exact copies of those going all the way on up your building to any levels that you select. In this exercise, I'd like to create a sloped floor inside of a garage area. To accomplish that, we need to use the floor command to draw a floor in first, and then use what's called a slope arrow to have the floor slope in the direction that the slope arrow indicates. Begin by coming underneath the Architecture tab and picking on Floor. Then use the Rectangle tool to draw in from one interior wall to the opposite interior intersection of walls, a rectangle. Click on each of these little padlocks. This is going to lock our floor in to be flush with the face of each of these walls. So if any of these walls should move, the floor will move along with it. Next, we want to add that slope arrow. So you select on slope arrow, and then right in the middle of the top line, click. That's going to be the base point for our slope arrow. And then right here in the middle of this line, click. And now this is our slope arrow going from here to here. Before we click the big green check mark up there, we need to check some of the properties over here in the properties area. Right now we can see that the slope arrow has a specified height at tail. What this means is that technically the slope arrow can either have a percentage slope that we can type in, or an exact height at one end and then an exact height at the other end. And that's what height at tail means. So let's leave it at height at tail, even though we could enter a slope if we wanted to. Now, as far as height offsets go, 1 foot is way too much. I'm just going to make this be 1 inch. It'll be 1 inch higher at this end than it will be at this end. 0 is just fine for me here for the height at the other end. So click the big green check mark there. It gets to be a little hard to tell what has happened. So let's look at this in a 3D view now. You may need to spin this model around so you can see it from this direction. And the easiest way to do that would be to just click the word right here on your view cube. When you do that, it'll take you to this view, And if you look really close, you'll see that this end here is in fact higher than this end over here. It's sloping in the exact direction of the slope arrow, and it's 1 inch difference from here down to here, just like we specified. So by using the slope arrow, you can create a floor that slopes in the direction that the slope arrow indicates, as well as specify what the height would be at one end of the slope arrow and the other end of the slope arrow. Or you could even specify a certain percentage of slope and have the floor follow the slope arrow at that percentage of the slope. In this video, we're going to learn how to place floors in our architectural project. To begin with, come underneath the Architecture tab and then find the Floor tool, then select on Floor. When you do this, we'll see a variety of different floors that we can select off of the Type Selector list underneath Properties. Now, to be honest, none of these floors really match the kind of floor that we want to do in this project. In other words, this is the first floor of our building, and I want to have a floor that's going to be actually on grade. In this case, though, since we don't have one that matches up just perfectly, and I don't want to create a new one from scratch just yet, move over and select the generic 12-inch floor off of the list. It can always be replaced or adjusted after the fact. Once you've selected on the floor generic 12-inch, make sure that the level here just says level 1. Check your drawing tools, and what we're going to do is we're going to draw all the way around the perimeter of this with the floor. Now, structurally speaking, this probably isn't the best thing that we could do, but just to demonstrate how floors work, this should work really well. Move up here and select on the Rectangle tool. And you notice that you can't really pick on the intersection of these two spots very well. So just click at the intersection of one of these. We'll adjust it after the fact. And then pick on the intersection of another one of these mullions. Hit escape a couple times on the keyboard. Pick on this line here. And then just drag it down until it lines up with this line here. It'll even kind of snap into place. Do the same thing with the line going up across the top. Click on it, drag it up. Then when it's even with that line going across the top, click the let go. If you zoom back out, you should see this purple or magenta line going all the way around the outside of the building. Then, if you click the big green check mark, we'll now have a floor in that location. To verify this, come up to your 3D icon and click on the little house. And you should now see a floor going all the way around the perimeter of your first floor. As I mentioned, after the fact, we could always adjust it. And when I say that, I mean that you could select on the floor and then pick a different floor off of the Type Selector list if you wanted to, such as generic 12-inch filled. And now it's replaced with that type of floor as opposed to the other type of floor that it was. Now let's draw in another floor up here on the second floor. We'll need to go to our Level 2 floor plan by just double-clicking there on Level 2. We can see what's going on right here with some of these taller walls, as well as some of these walls that are grayed out. The grayed out walls are the ones that are short. They're actually below our second floor. These ones that are darker, they're coming up through the second floor and going up to some of the floors up above. Now we could always modify our floor so that it will have holes for each of these walls, or we can adjust the walls themselves so they'll just go up to the underneath side of the floor. We have a variety of different things that we could do. But in this case, move up here to the Architecture tab again, select on the Floor tool, use the Line tool this time, and let's start to draw, beginning with this intersection right here. Zoom out, zoom back in, and then click right there at the end of this curtain wall. The next thing I like to do is click this Pick Walls tool, and then check this checkbox that says Extend in the Wall Core. When we do that and then move our mouse over, we'll see a little dashed line will show up toward the middle of this wall, and this is the core, or the structural part of the wall. So what we're getting ready to say is this floor is going to go through the structural part of this wall. In fact, it's going to have the walls up above it sit on top of the floor, while the floor itself will sit on the wall down below. So it's going to partially support the walls up above as well as be supported by the walls down below. And that's because Extend in the Wall Core is checked. If Extend in the Wall Core was not checked, you'll notice that you don't get that dashed line except for up here at the top as well as the bottom. It's there, it's just very hard to see. So check Extend in the wall core, move your mouse until you see that dashed line, and then click in order to place it. We'll make this connection here in just a second. Once again, pick the line tool. We're going to start there. And now we're basically just going to play connect the dots, zooming in and zooming out by using the wheel on the mouse to draw our walls all the way around the perimeter. Bring it back to the start. Then zoom in here and hit escape a couple times on the keyboard. Let's just bring this over so they're almost touching each other. The next thing I'd like to do is kind of eliminate the thickness of these lines so that I know exactly where they need to go. So I'm going to select on the View tab and then turn Thin Lines on. Now click on the line and then drag it over until it gets to that line right there. Now we can see that they're right over the top of each other. And when you do that, you can use the line command to draw from there to there and hit escape a couple of times on the keyboard. Do that same process over here at the other end. Line, connect them. Now that all the lines are connected, and if you could follow it around with your finger, you'd go all the way from the start to the end. Click the big green check mark to finish that floor. It'll ask an important question. Would you like the walls that go up to this floor's level to attach to its bottom? So things like this curtain wall, would you like it to just go to the bottom of the wall? In this case, we're going to say yes to that. It's given us a warning message, but I'm not too worried about it. It's basically saying that it's going to have to delete some of the mullions if it does this. For our purposes right now, that's fine. So click on Delete Elements. Then it'll give us another big warning message telling us that on the highlighted walls, it's going to cut some of the material out of that wall. And is that going to be okay? In this case, it's exactly what we wanted to do. So say yes to that. By doing that, we now have a floor up on our second level. Also, if we go to this section view and double click really fast on the circle, if you zoom in, you'll see the floor is sitting on the structural part of the wall, and then the next part of the wall is sitting on top of the floor. When it asked, do you want to cut that extra material out of the wall? It was talking about cutting that extra material out there between where the floor is now located at. I'm going to click on the X to get out of this view. Now, an easy zooming trick is if you double click on the wheel on your mouse. That'll do an automatic zoom extent, so I just double clicked on the wheel. And if you come now to the 3D view icon and select on it, you'll be able to see that there's a floor here as well as a floor here. So to draw your floors in, move up to the Architecture tab, ideally be in a floor plan view, though you don't necessarily have to be. Find the floor command, and then choose the appropriate tools off of the list in order to be able to draw that shape of the floor in wherever you need it to be. Then when it's all said and done, click the big green check mark in order to finish your floor. In this video, we're going to learn how to edit the sketch of an existing floor. And what this means is edit the way that the existing floor currently is formed. In this particular instance, we'll be able to see that this part of the building has a floor going all the way through it. Now there's two different ways that we can add openings to a floor. One way is to use what's called an opening object in the floor. The other way is modify the sketch of the floor so that there's a hole right in that location of the floor. To accomplish this, we first need to select on the floor object. And we're on level 2. And honestly, selecting on this floor object could be easy or it could be difficult. The reason why I say that is that if you move up here toward the top, you may accidentally select on such things as the curtain wall or select on one of these exterior walls. And if we want to grab onto the floor, we can't just window around it because that won't select it. One way that you can grab onto a floor is just window around everything in the view, coming up to the filter, which will show up on the ribbon, and then clearing out the check mark next to each of these different items except for the floor. Then if you click on OK, you'll only have the floor selected. The other way that you could do it though, is if the floor wasn't selected, is that you can move your cursor over to right about where the edge of the floor is at, then click the Tab key on your keyboard. Eventually, that floor will highlight and you can click in order to select the floor. So by hitting the Tab key, it will cycle through the different objects that are sitting there, and eventually it'll give you your floor to click on. Once you have your floor highlighted, there's an option that says Edit Boundary. If you select on that, you'll see these purple/magenta lines going all the way around where the floor's boundary has been at. At this point, if I selected on any of these lines, I could then delete it or modify it or draw in new lines, whatever the case may be. For this instance, though, I'd like to add a hole right in this area. A fast way for me to do that is to select on the rectangle command and draw in some extra lines. Once I have those in place, I even have the opportunity to lock these by clicking on the little padlocks that show up. What this will do is if any of these walls should move a few inches in this direction or a few inches in that direction, then the floor will update as well to match the opening that those walls are trying to create. Whenever this is done, click on the big green check mark. It'll ask, would you like the walls that go up to this floor's level to attach to its bottom? I'll say yes to that. And that was referring to any walls that may have been in a level down below. Would we still want those to attach to the bottom of the floor? And the answer to that question was yes. Now it's difficult to see whether or not it's cut that opening right now, but if you move down here and select on this box and click on Shaded, we can then see the gray area is where the floor is located at, and the white area is that new hole that we just created. So if you ever need to make a modification to a floor, the first thing you need to do is select the floor. And you can either use your Tab key by coming over to the edge of the floor and hitting Tab until it highlights, or just window around the floor and then filter out everything but your floor object. Then once you have it, you can do Edit Boundary to make modifications to either the exterior or interior boundaries to change your floor shape. You can add arcs, circles, and a variety of other shapes to create pretty much any kind of floor condition as far as outer dimensions are concerned that you might need for your flooring conditions.